When you look at the difference between the way wealthy people think and the way the average person thinks, the first distinction always comes back to the lens of scarcity versus the lens of abundance. Most people live in a world framed by limits. They've been trained from childhood to believe there's only so much to go around, so much money, so much opportunity, so much success. And because they see the world through that filter of scarcity, they shrink their vision, they lower their expectations, and they accept less than what they're capable of creating. The wealthy, on the other hand, live in the same world, face the same challenges, and deal with the same economic realities, yet they choose to interpret those realities differently. They understand that opportunity is not something that runs out, it's something that expands as you engage with it. Scarcity is ultimately a mindset, not a condition. Think about this: two people can grow up in the same neighborhood with the same background, and one will see nothing but limits while the other sees endless possibilities. It's not because the circumstances are different, it's because the thinking is different. The one who embraces abundance trains themselves to see opportunity where others see obstacles. They ask, what can be created here? Instead of saying, there's nothing here. And that single difference in perspective is often the difference between living paycheck to paycheck and building wealth that lasts for generations. One of the biggest traps of scarcity thinking is the zero-sum game mentality. It's the belief that if someone else wins, you have to lose. If someone else makes money, it must mean less money is available for you. But wealthy thinkers understand that value creation expands the pie instead of shrinking it. If you invent something new, create a business, or offer a service that solves a problem, you're not taking from someone else. You're adding to the world. And when you add, wealth follows. This is why wealthy people don't resent other people's success. They study it, they model it, and they use it as evidence that abundance is possible for them too. Now, let's get practical. Scarcity shows up in small ways in everyday life. It shows up when someone says, I can't afford that. Instead of asking, how can I afford that? It shows up when someone avoids investing because they're afraid of losing rather than learning how to make money grow. It shows up when someone stays in a job they hate because they believe security is more valuable than possibility. These are all symptoms of a scarcity mindset. Wealthy thinkers instead reframe the question. They don't say, I can't. They say, what needs to happen so I can? That simple reframe opens the door to creativity, problem solving, and eventually results. The truth is, abundance thinking is not the optimism. It doesn't mean ignoring risks, pretending challenges don't exist, or believing that money will fall from the sky. It means recognizing that resources are created through ideas, relationships, and action. It's about seeing potential instead of only focusing on limits. Psychologically, abundance thinking frees you from the paralysis of fear. Philosophically, it moves you from a posture of taking to a posture of giving. Practically, it compels you to take bold action because you believe there's more to gain than there is to lose. If you've ever noticed, people with a scarcity mindset tend to cling tightly to what little they have, hoping to protect it. But clinging is not the posture of growth. You can't grasp new opportunities if your hands are closed. Wealthy people open their hands, they invest, they give, they collaborate. They understand that generosity creates networks, networks create opportunities, and opportunities create wealth. This is why so many wealthy people are also big givers. They don't give because they're wealthy because they give. The act of releasing creates flow, and flow attracts more abundance. The shift from scarcity to abundance begins in your language and in your imagination. The words you use about money and opportunity matter. If you constantly tell yourself there's never enough, you program your mind to accept lack. If you train yourself to look for opportunities, your mind becomes wired to spot them. And once you see them, you can't unsee them. The wealthy train their imagination to create solutions. They imagine businesses, strategies, and systems that don't exist yet. And in doing so, they bring them into existence. That's the essence of abundance. It's created, not found. This mindset shift doesn't happen overnight. It requires intentional practice, a reconditioning of thought patterns that may have been passed down for generations. But once you make the shift, it changes how you approach everything: your work, your relationships, your finances, and your future. You stop asking, what do I stand to lose? And start asking, what do I stand to create? That's when you step into the thought world of the wealthy. And here's the reflection I want to leave you with: scarcity is safe, but it keeps you small. Abundance is risky, but it makes you grow. If you want to step into wealth, you must be willing to see beyond limits, to imagine more than what exists, and to act as though the world is overflowing with opportunity. Because for the one who believes it is, it always will be. Most people are trained, friend, from an early age to think in terms of earning income. The formula is simple: go to school, get a job, trade hours for dollars. And if you want more, either work harder or hope for a raise. That's the mentality of the middle class. It's not wrong. It can put food on the table and pay the bills, but it's not the way wealth is built. The wealthy operate by a very different principle. They understand that income is limited, but assets are unlimited. Income stops the moment you stop working, but assets keep producing whether you're awake, asleep, or even gone. That shift from income to assets is one of the most powerful mindset shifts anyone can make if they truly want to think like the wealthy. Think about it. If you're paid by the hour or by the task, there's a ceiling on your income. There are only 24 hours in a day, only so much you can physically do. Even if you're highly skilled and highly paid, your earning capacity is capped by time. The wealthy see that as a trap. They don't want to be paid for their time. They want to be paid for their ownership. Ownership of a business, ownership of real estate, ownership of intellectual property. Ownership of systems that continue to produce value long after the initial work is done. Assets are leverage, and leverage is how you multiply effort into exponential results. Psychologically, this shift requires breaking free from the deeply ingrained belief that the safest path is the one with a paycheck. The paycheck feels secure because it comes regularly, but in reality, it's fragile. One decision from a boss, one change in the market, and it's gone. Assets, on the other hand, require more risk up front, but they create independence. They free you from the trap of someone else deciding your worth. The wealthy understand this, which is why they focus relentlessly on building and acquiring assets rather than just chasing higher salaries. Now, let's go deeper. What is an asset? Really, at its core, an asset is anything that continues to create value without requiring your constant presence. A rental property continues to earn rent whether you're there or not. A business system continues to operate as long as it has customers and structure, even when you're on vacation. A book, a course, or a patent can generate royalties for decades. An investment in stocks or companies can compound and multiply far beyond the initial amount. Assets don't just earn once, they earn repeatedly. That's why wealthy thinkers spend their energy acquiring, building, and multiplying them. The middle class often sees assets as luxuries, something you buy once you've made it. But the wealthy see them as necessities. You buy them in order to make it. This inversion of thinking is what allows them to get ahead. They don't just save money, they convert money into assets. They don't just work for money, they make money work for them. The wealthy play the game of multiplication, while most people are stuck in addition. If you earn more, you add to your income. But if you build assets, you multiply your wealth. Philosophically, this mindset shift is also about time. When you earn income, your money only lives as long as your effort. When you build assets, your money begins to outlive you. That's why wealthy people think in terms of legacy. An asset is something you can pass on, something that continues to bless your family and community long after you're gone. It's not just about personal gain, it's about generational impact. That's why assets matter. They create freedom, they create stability, and they create the possibility of changing not just your own life, but the lives of those who come after you. Practically speaking, this shift begins with asking different questions. Instead of asking, how can I earn more? Start asking, what can I own that will earn for me? Instead of thinking, how many hours can I work? Think, what can I build that works even when I don't? That's the wealthy mindset. It doesn't mean you stop working hard. It means you work hard on the right things. Work hard to build assets, not just to collect paychecks. Work hard to create systems, not just to complete tasks. The truth is, this shift isn't easy because it requires letting go of comfort and embracing responsibility. Assets require more knowledge, more discipline, and more vision. They demand that you think long-term instead of short-term. They force you to take ownership of your financial destiny. But once you've made the shift, the rewards far outweigh the risk. You'll find yourself in a position where your time is free, your income is multiplied, and your life is not controlled by someone else's decision about what you're worth. So here's the challenge I'll leave you with. Stop thinking like an earner. Start thinking like an owner. Stop asking how much you can make in a day and start asking how much you can build for a lifetime. Wealth is not found in trading hours for dollars. It's found in acquiring assets that create value, whether you're present or not. When you think like the wealthy, you stop chasing paychecks and start building empires. And the sooner you make that shift, the sooner you'll discover the kind of freedom that only ownership can buy. One of the most powerful differences between how the wealthy think and how most people think is this: the wealthy orient themselves around creating value, while the majority orient themselves around consuming it. You can see this distinction everywhere. The middle class tends to ask questions like, what can I buy with this paycheck? What can I afford right now? They focus on acquiring, on spending, on enjoying the fruits of value someone else has created. The wealthy, by contrast, wake up asking, what can I build today? What problem can I solve that people will gladly pay for? What can I create that multiplies value in the marketplace? That is the mindset shift that turns ordinary effort into extraordinary wealth. The truth is, all wealth begins with value creation. Money is just a medium of exchange, a way of transferring value from one person to another. If you want more money, the answer is not to complain about what you don't have. It's to ask yourself how much value you are producing for others. Wealthy people understand this simple truth. The market always rewards value. If you want to change your income, you have to change your output. You don't increase wealth by demanding it, but by creating something that is worth it. And here's the psychological depth of this shift: consuming value is easy, but creating value requires imagination, discipline, and sacrifice. It is the difference between short-term satisfaction and long-term multiplication. Anyone can buy a product, anyone can enjoy an experience, but not everyone takes on the responsibility of building those things. That's why creators are paid more than consumers. Wealth flows to the originators, not just the participants. If you want to think like the wealthy, you must begin to see yourself as a producer, a builder, a solver of problems, not just someone who enjoys the solutions others have created. Now let's break it down. A consumer mindset looks at the world and asks, what can I get from this? A creator mindset looks at the world and asks, what can I contribute to this? That's a radically different posture. And the difference in outcomes is just as radical. Consumers spend, then end up empty, waiting for the next paycheck or the next opportunity to consume again. Creators invest. They invest their time, their energy, their creativity, and the result of that investment keeps paying dividends long after the initial work is done. That's the essence of wealth creation, sowing into the marketplace something that continues to reap returns. Philosophically, this shift is about moving from dependence to independence. A consumer is dependent on someone else to provide. A creator is independent because they are the provider. That independence translates into freedom. If you can create value at will, you're no longer chained to a job, a boss, or even a single source of income. You can move, adapt, innovate, and expand because your wealth is tied to your ability to create, not just your ability to spend. That's why wealthy people are free while so many others are bound. They've taken control of the value equation. This shift also requires humility and courage. Humility, because to create value, you have to pay attention to the needs of others. You can't just chase your own pleasure. You have to notice what people want, what they lack, what they're willing to pay for. Courage, because creating value often means venturing into the unknown, taking risks, and offering something before it's guaranteed to succeed. Consumers wait until the path is clear. Creators make the path by walking it. That's the spirit of entrepreneurship, and it's the mindset that separates those who merely survive from those who thrive. Practically speaking, this doesn't mean you have to invent the next big technology or build $1 billion company overnight. It means wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you start asking, how can I create more value here? If you're in a job, can you solve a bigger problem for your employer or your customers? If you're in business, can you package your expertise into a product or service that multiplies your reach? If you have knowledge, can you turn it into intellectual property that keeps working for you? Every step toward creating value is a step toward wealth, because value is the currency the market respects most. And here's the secret. The act of creating value not only changes your bank account, it changes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone at the mercy of the system and start seeing yourself as someone who shapes the system. You stop waiting for permission and start building possibilities. You stop thinking, I can't afford this, and start asking, What can I build that makes this affordable? That's when you cross the line from consumer to creator, from limitation to abundance, from surviving to truly thriving. So, the question I want to leave you with is this: are you spending your life consuming what others have built, or are you committing your life to building something others can benefit from? One path keeps you dependent, the other makes you indispensable. If you want to think like the wealthy, stop chasing what you can get and start focusing on what you can create. Because at the end of the day, wealth doesn't flow to consumers, it flows to creators. And the moment you make that shift, the game changes forever. Most people live with their minds trapped in short term survival. They're thinking about the bills at the end of the month, the paycheck at the end of the week, or the expenses that are staring them in the face today. And let's be honest, that way of thinking feels urgent, it feels necessary, it feels responsible. But it's also the very mindset that keeps people from ever stepping into true wealth. The wealthy think differently. They stretch their imagination beyond today's needs, beyond this month's expenses, beyond even their own lifetime. They live with a vision of legacy, and it is that vision that guides their decisions, shapes their actions, and multiplies their wealth. You see, survival thinking keeps you reactive. You spend your time putting out fires, scrambling to cover costs, hoping nothing unexpected derails your plans. Legacy thinking is proactive. It looks at the same challenges but asks, how can I create something that outlasts me? How can I structure this decision so it doesn't just benefit me today, but benefits my children and their children and their children after them? That's not just financial planning, that's generational vision. And that's why wealthy people play a different game. They're not playing to win the month, they're playing to win the century. The psychology behind this is powerful. When you focus only on the short term, your decisions tend to be small. You avoid risk, you cling to security, you settle for what feels safe. But when you focus on the long term, your decisions expand. You're willing to take risks, to invest in assets, to build businesses, to delay gratification. Why? Because you're not measuring success by the comfort of the moment. You're measuring it by the impact of a lifetime. Wealthy thinkers are comfortable with delayed gratification because they're clear on their destination. They're willing to plant trees they may never sit under because they know someone else will. That's the posture of legacy. Philosophically, this shift is about moving from consumption to contribution. If all you're thinking about is surviving, your question is always, how do I get enough for me? But if you're thinking in terms of legacy, your question becomes, how do I create enough for others? And when you ask bigger questions, you get bigger answers. Wealth flows to those who solve problems at scale, and the mindset of legacy naturally pushes you to think bigger, serve more people, and build systems that continue to generate value. That's why the wealthy focus on legacy. It's not just about leaving money behind. It's about leaving structures, businesses, institutions, and principles that empower the next generation to do even more. Let's look at it practically. A survival mindset says, I just need to make enough to pay rent this month. A legacy mindset says, I'm going to buy real estate that pays rent to me for decades. A survival mindset says, I just need a job that's secure. A legacy mindset says, I'm going to create opportunities so secure that I can hire others. A survival mindset says, I just need to save enough for retirement. A legacy mindset says, I'm going to build something that keeps producing wealth long after I retire, long after I'm gone. Both mindsets deal with the same reality, but they lead to very different outcomes. And here's the truth that most people miss. Thinking long term doesn't just benefit the next generation, it benefits you today. Why? Because when you operate with a legacy perspective, you start living with purpose. You make decisions not out of fear, but out of vision. You wake up with direction, knowing that what you're building matters. That sense of purpose fuels you, motivates you, and gives you the energy to keep going when others would quit. Legacy thinking doesn't just create wealth, it creates meaning. But let me be clear, legacy is not only about money. It's about principles, values, and impact. Wealthy people understand that money without wisdom destroys, but money combined with wisdom multiplies. That's why they don't just leave dollars, they leave direction. They teach their children how to think, how to invest, how to build. They create systems that transfer not just wealth, but the mindset of wealth. Because if you leave the resources without the mindset, you're giving your heirs the fruit, but not the tree. True legacy is about leaving both. This is the shift the middle class rarely makes because they are so caught up in the immediacy of life. And yet, it's the very shift that opens the door to generational wealth. It's not about being reckless with today, it's about being responsible with tomorrow. It's not about ignoring the short term, it's about letting the long term guide the short term. When you align your decisions with legacy, survival takes care of itself. But when you align only with survival, legacy never comes. So here's the question you have to wrestle with. Are you living for the next paycheck, or are you building for the next generation? The answer to that question will determine not just your wealth, but your impact, because survival ends with you, but legacy lives beyond you. And the moment you start thinking in terms of legacy, you step out of the cycle of limitation and into the flow of wealth that continues long after you're gone. If you want to think like the wealthy, stop asking, how do I get by? And start asking, what do I leave behind? Because true wealth isn't measured by what you accumulate. It's measured by what continues when you're no longer here. That's the mindset shift. That's the power of legacy. And once you embrace it, your life, your wealth, and your impact will never be the same.